Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm catching up on doing some videos because I haven't made a lot of videos in a while because I just moved. So now that I'm getting settled in, I'm hoping to start making videos a bit more regularly. I feel like I keep saying that with this channel, but hopefully now it will be true. So I just made a video that will likely come out before this about what I've read this spooky season so far and what my TBR is for the rest of the year. In that video, I talked about this book that I am gonna review in this video. So yeah, I said I had kind of complex feelings about this book, so I think it deserves its own review. So the book I'm talking about is Monster Hunter International by Larry Correia. So first and foremost, I'll start with what the book's about, and then I'll talk about what I liked about it, and then I'll talk about some of the issues I had with it, which are numerous. And I apologize right away. I know my videos usually are a bit rambly. This one might be a bit more so because I have a lot of thoughts about this and I don't really know how to structure them. So first and foremost, what's it about? So this book follows our main character, Owen Zastava Pitt, who is an accountant who loves guns, and one day at work, his boss calls him into his office and then turns into a werewolf and attacks him. And because of his sheer size, because of Owen's sheer size and his carrying a gun, he is able to somehow fight off the werewolf and survive the encounter. He wakes up in hospital and he is contacted by a private company called Monster Hunter International, and he's recruited by them to join and fight monsters. So that is the plot. I won't go any further into it than that for spoiler reasons. And yeah, so what I liked about this book was a lot of fun to read. It is a 700-page book, and I read it, I think, in 5 days, which is really fast for me. And yeah, so it read really fast, and it is a lot of fun. With that type of story, I'm sure you can guess, it's a really kind of action-heavy, pulpy book, right? It's very much a 1980s action movie of a book. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was very action-forward. It was exciting. It was scary. The monsters in this, I think, worked really well. There were moments in this that were really suspenseful because the monsters really were scary and indestructible, right? So yeah, those are some of the things I really liked about it. And also its humor. It had some of its humor didn't land, but some of it really did. It's written in the first person, and partially because of that, it reminded me a lot of The Dresden Files by Jim Butcher, which is a comparison I've seen made a couple times. And I think in its tone, its humor, and the fact that it's first person, and the fact that it's kind of urban fantasy, right? I think, sure, that comparison is valid to Dresden Files, but I think it does stop there. So yeah, if you're looking for a really fun, brain candy kind of action movie of a book, I would recommend it. And for those purposes, for those reasons, I really did enjoy it. But it was a pretty big guilty pleasure. And the reason for that is I have a lot of issues with the politics of this book and how transparently the author kind of feeds his own views into the book. And why that mattered to me more so with this book than with others. So what I mean by that is there's a couple issues with this book. Partially from the story alone, you know, this kind of gun-loving guy getting into monster hunting, the kind of style of the pulp action movie, it comes with a certain type of masculinity, and that was definitely on display. There was definitely a lot of the kind of male gaze and that type of stuff, which I think exists in other books, right? Like it exists in the Dresden Files a little bit. But with the Dresden Files, I at least get the sense that that's not Jim Butcher doing that. It is the character of Harry Dresden, right? Like I get the sense that, oh, it makes sense for the character of Harry Dresden to think and act and talk in these ways. This book started to get very uncomfortable because it was very clear that it was not just the characters, but it was the author. And that the book is in many ways an author's self-insert. Because, as I said, the main character, Owen, is an accountant who loves guns. Larry Correia, the author, is, or was, an accountant who loves guns. Loves guns. He sells guns, he trains people with guns, he goes to gun shows, and he opened up a gun store. And so, if you're into guns, this book might be even more interesting to you because it's kind of fighting monsters with a lot of firepower, like a lot of different types of guns and ammunitions and all that stuff. That stuff really went over my head, but if you're into that, there's probably some cool details in this. So, with Larry Correia being an accountant and a gun lover, it started to get pretty clear early on that the story is definitely a bit of an author self-insert, which then makes the male gaze and some of that type of, the commenting on women's bodies and the kind of humor that's kind of inserted at times made that seem much more like it was coming from the author than it was coming from a character. So that definitely started to get my discomfort up a little bit while reading. The other area where it's really clear what the author's views are instead of just the characters is with the politics of this book. So this is unabashedly a libertarian book. There are 1,000 comments in this book right away from the beginning. Things like, oh, damn the feds, damn the government, private company, is better than government agency or public sector, capitalism is the best. A lot of things like that. There's a real distrust and disdain for anything government affiliated in this book. And looking into Larry Correia, I was unsurprised to find that he is also a libertarian. He is quite kind of right-wing libertarian. So again, this book really wears its politics on its sleeves, which is fine, but it gets more uncomfortable when you realize more and more how transparently those views are the author's views, and not just the views of a character. Now, I'm not saying, and in fact I don't agree with the idea that you have to agree with the politics of whoever you read. Especially in science fiction, there's a huge history of libertarian sci-fi. I hope I don't kind of represent anyone, but people like Robert Heinlein and Jerry Pournelle, right? Like these were people that were huge in the sci-fi genre, and books that authors that I've read and enjoyed to some degree or another, that are openly libertarian in their books. But what makes it more uncomfortable with this is the author's kind of investment in those beliefs reaches another level. And what I mean by that is, I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll disagree with the author's politics, but I can still enjoy the book. And to a certain extent, I did. But again, looking into Larry Correia, I found out that I had never heard of this movement, but there's a movement called Sad Puppies. And essentially their whole thing was they were a lobbying group, specifically trying to lobby against the Hugo Awards, kind of the most long-standing and kind of well-respected sci-fi and fantasy awards, and saying that the Hugo Awards have become discriminatory against straight white men, and that all the Hugo Awards do now is just put people of color and non-cis het people on a pedestal and just focus on, books that are politically correct and all that stuff. So that's what Sad Puppies is fighting against. They are actively, anti-diversity, anti-progressivism, and Larry Correia is the founder of that movement. And he founded the movement because he wanted to get this book nominated for a Hugo Award. I enjoyed this book, but no offense, Larry, this is not Hugo Award stuff, right? Like, Hugo Award to me is Ursula K. Le Guin, and she's actually won multiple times, I think, for The Dispossessed and The Left Hand of Darkness, right? People like Isaac Asimov or Orson Scott Card, who's an author that I actually do have moral political issues with as well, but books like Speaker for the Dead are intensely, beautiful, philosophical, creative, worthy of that award. And I don't think this is, no matter how much I enjoyed it. So yeah, Larry Correia started the Sad Puppy movement. So that level of engagement with not just having certain beliefs, but actively lobbying within the publishing industry to get those beliefs more visibility and to reduce the visibility of progressive beliefs, as he calls them, that's where a lot of the discomfort started to come in, right? So that took what was really a fun, simple, turn off your mind action book into a much more complex, frankly, guilty pleasure. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend this book because of that, even though I really enjoyed reading it. And I think it's a shame because I had a blast with this book in a lot of ways. It was thrilling, it was scary, it was well written for what it is, right? Like it's not beautiful prose, it's not a complex structure, but for what it is, it's written well. It's written to the point in that kind of Dresden Styles first person snarky narrator way. But yeah, a lot of the issues around Larry Correia clearly just shoehorning his political, sexual, and moral beliefs into it, mixed with his active work to undermine kind of people of color and any other thing that he labels progressive in the publishing industry, really complicate my enjoyment of this book. So, and one last thing, I said it reads really fast, and it does. It's a 700-page book, and I did read it in a few days, and I really enjoyed it. That being said, this does not need to be a 700-page book. You could easily cut 200 pages out of this, and it would be just as good, if not a little better. But yeah, so I would recommend this book if you're able to kind of turn a part of your brain off and just enjoy a fun ride. And if you can, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what I did to a certain extent with this book. But it might complicate your enjoyment of the book when you consider all of that stuff. Because it's really prevalent. Like, this book wears those beliefs very openly. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Monster Hunter International. Will I continue with the series? It's a good question. Maybe, maybe not. I really don't know yet. If I do, I can say that I will probably buy secondhand, so as to not maybe support this person financially. But despite my best efforts, it was a really fun book, but it has a lot of issues that really complicated my enjoyment and my ability to recommend it. So if you've read Larry Correia, let me know what you think. Let me know if I've offended you now or anything. But yeah, I hope to do more reviews soon. I enjoy talking about individual books more in depth, and I don't do enough of it. So yeah, hopefully I will be back soon with more videos. Thanks.